Here to say that this is not true. The person, two options here. He either didn't read the report or he's telling you a lie. That's not true at all. So I'm going to give you the context of my presence here. I was a Lorry Farm Commissioner for 5 years, and I was, together with my fellow commissioners, in charge of preparing the final report on the subject. Because, and I must now read for you what I have to say, because this is an account of the facts, just to make it quite appropriate for you to understand this matter. So, about, I would say 9 years ago, the Law Reform Commission of Western Australia released a comprehensive 318 pages, including annexures, entitled Review of the Firearms Act 1973, a discussion paper that sought submissions from stakeholders regarding responses to 46 proposals and 44 questions. In the course of preparing its final report, the Commission undertook extensive consultations, and the reference garnered an enormous amount of public interest. The Commission took great care to not overact. An often repeated theme of the submissions made to the Commission was that the firearms legislation is for the administration and regulation of the lawfully held firearms, whereas many of the new reports concern unlawfully held firearms. The Commission agreed that the vast majority of firearms users in Western Australia are law-abiding citizens, and the Commission certainly had no intention of recommending any legislative change that could make it more difficult for firearms users to abide by the law, while having no practical purpose to meet the objects of the Act. That's found in the report on page 9. In fact, the Commission agreed with Michael Kirby, former Chief Justice of the High Court, that law reform and respect for basic human rights are not luxuries graciously granted by rulers to their subjects. They are the precious rights of citizens who are entitled to demand them and to enjoy their fruits. By the close of the public consultation period, the Commission received an unprecedented level of responses to its call for submissions. It was quite clear that the individuals and organizations preparing these submissions had gone to considerable lengths to respond to the questions and proposals. Ultimately, our Commission received 1,244 written submissions. This was the largest response that the Commission has ever received in one of its referrals. It included submissions not only from ordinary gun owners, but also for those who wished for greater restrictions on firearms, as well as from various agencies and organizations, including the Western Australia Police. The extensive consultations undertaken and submissions scrutinized were essential to ensure that the Commission was fully informed before making its final recommendations. It was important to obtain the views of ordinary law-abiding firearm owners, the views of those who wished for greater restrictions, and finally the views of the WA Police as the agency responsible for the legislation. Through the consultation period, an understanding was formed by myself and my fellow commissioners that most crimes involving firearms are carried out by people who are not licensed to carry firearms.
Yes.
Released to the community in October 2016, the Commission's final report on the review of the Firearms Act contained 143 recommendations, many of which are broken up into sub-recommendations to provide specific guidance on recommended reform. The final reform, I think it's important to say, reminds us that the vast majority of firearm users in Western Australia are law-abiding. The Commission thus found no reason whatsoever in the report to recommend legislative change that would make it more difficult for firearm users to abide by the law. Instead, new legislation was recommended that strikes a proper balance between the need for regulation while considerably reducing red tape for the users of firearms. Some recommendations go as follows. Recommendation 52.2. The fact that an applicant to a firearm already has a firearm or firearms similar to the firearm that is the subject of an application should not be a reason to assess the additional firearm as being unjustified. Recommendation 54. Thank you. Recommendation 54. There should be no upper limit on the number of firearms a single firearm license holder may possess. Firearms are often categorized by considering factors such as action type, magazine capacity, and ammunition. Our final report recommends the categorization method to be maintained as the basis of the regulatory scheme. This being so because no evidence is provided to suggest that the then existing system was or posed a threat to public safety. Under that system, to satisfy the genuine test for firearms under category D, the applicant would have satisfied the police commissioner that the firearm category D is required for government purposes only. Our final report notes that some Australian jurisdictions permit or is still permitted the use of a category D firearm for hunting and culling. Since the Commission was satisfied that a category D arm could be generally required for some types of control, pest control, our final report recommends, and I read here, Recommendation 80.1, a professional shooter whose occupation is the extermination of feral animals or a prime producer may obtain approval for a category D firearm where the licensing authority is satisfied that the use of such firearm is for a particular purpose. Still, these recommendations were made a few years ago. Absolutely nothing has changed to justify any legislation that ignores the final report's recommendations. Still, the government, the Labour government in Western Australia has blatantly ignored the report in order to achieve the biggest and most draconian gun control legislation in Australia's history. Therefore, the Labour government in Western Australia has no right whatsoever to ignore the 143 recommendations of the Law Reform Commission. There is nothing in the Commission's final report, absolutely nothing, that recommends further gun restrictions or confiscation of licensed firearms. Of course, the new consultation was a setup, was fake. The Labour government had an anti-gun rights agenda to pursue it. And it pushed the anti-gun agenda regardless of any feedback provided. They were lying to you. They were deceiving you. Of course, the new consultation was a setup. I want to make it absolutely clear to you. The government imposed the overall of the legislation in total and complete disregard of the 143 recommendations provided by the Commission after consulting thousands and thousands of people. So it's an authoritarian regime because they're imposing this on you. These laws were enacted arbitrarily because the local oligarchs who control both houses of parliament want to remove the rights of the law-abiding people to own guns. This is a violation of fundamental rights. This is outrageous, but actually explains why they like so much to enact emergency acts, emergency powers. They act without any accountability whatsoever. I think you should teach them a lesson. Let's restore the rule of law and their fundamental rights to this nation, starting from Western Australia. Thank you very much. Thank you.